Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to TNMCoaching Unplugged podcast. We're so grateful and happy that our followership is growing. Due to you, every week we have more and more subscribers, and I'm receiving such wonderful messages from people within business that some of the topics that we're sharing and covering in our podcast are really adding value to their life. And today we're going to have this wonderful guest with us, and we will be diving into the space of team development, team coherence. What does it take to create a successful leadership team? Why are teams so important nowadays? And a lot of our clients are challenged, especially throughout the COVID and after COVID, in creating this team bonding, creating the team that really works. A lot of our clients are challenged with this hybrid working. Just 2 days ago, I was talking with one close client of ours, and he told me it's so difficult for us because we have some people in the office, some people out of the office. How do we create cohesion? How do we get people to come back? There's a lot of going on when it comes to the team development. A lot of the clients are challenged with the psychological well-being of the team, psychological safety within the team. There's a lot to discuss around this topic today. And I'm so grateful to have Johnny Husen, who is an expert leadership developer for more than 20 years of experience with a C-level leader. Then he was a consultant and executive advisor as well. Johnny has worked with a global organization to help them achieve sustainable growth through leadership development, strategy execution, and team alignment. And this is something that is really important because he has worked with the leadership, which is a beautiful instrument, then strategy, which is another important part, and then we have team alignment as well. He has an amazing experience in different industries, from commercial excellence, digital transformation, to post-merger integration. And in today's episode, we're going to dive into the core pillars of successful leadership team development. Why is this crucial in the day-to-day? What can we learn from Johnny? How can we improve ourselves? And so on and so forth. Johnny, so I'm so grateful that you're here with us today, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Zoran. Yeah. You make me sound like, a superstar. Thank you for that.
That you are, a superstar that you are. This is something, Johnny, that I always receive from people on podcasts, because I love this introduction. I love kind of creating the stage when people actually tune in to know who do we have in room. And I'm so happy that you feel like a superstar. That's the whole point of us being together. So where do we start, Johnny? I mean, I mentioned a few of the issues when it comes to what people are struggling with. But what I would love to ask you first is, what do you feel creates a good team? You've been in leadership positions, you've been coaching, you've been mentoring, you've been advising. From your experience, what are the core elements that you feel are necessary for a team to be labeled as a high performance team, or team that really operates well together, team that collaborates well together? What comes to your mind to begin with?
I mean, you actually mentioned a little about it. You mentioned COVID, you mentioned the hybrid, you mentioned, all the things are evolving around us, constantly evolving around us. I'm brought up, I started in the Army when I was 16 and a half. So being a special operator, very young, and moving into officers' positions, we were trained in the VUCA world. There was something invented by the U.S. Navy SEALs, because, every good plan has a lifespan. We make the best plans ever, strategy plans, tactical plans. And we were working with two kind of paradigms or two rules. One thing is that, all the efforts we put into making these good plans, the lifespan is until the first, encounter with the enemy. Then suddenly something happens. Translate that into business, you make a great strategy plan or great marketing plan. Suddenly the competitors start to do something, or, the consumers are not receptive to our great value propositions, although we spend a lot of money, developing all this. Second is actually, we need to, retain the initiative in the battle and the progression. Hence, we meet the competitors, we meet all the obstacles, the scarce resource of highly talented people. Whenever we face these things, the high-performing team that performs and is successful, I think they have very few things that they actually embrace. One thing is, it has to be fun. It really has to be fun, because, we spend 8, 12, 10, 12 hours a day working day in and day night. We take all the, responsibilities. So it needs to be fun. We need to be aligned. What is actually our winning aspiration? What is our winning goals? What is it that we actually know commonly can align and be commonly accountable for? Thirdly, being in a VUCA world, I'm not sure that everyone knows what VUCA world is, but a world which is constantly fluid, so it's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. The teams needs to be agile. Actually, I hate to say this word because in the old days, we just said, change readiness or flexible, but we say agile, it's super fun, but they need to be agile, and more importantly, or actually as important, we need to be resilient. So resilient leadership is actually some of the things that, is underlying my entire career, being operator, officer, managing director, setting up businesses, and now 15, 20 years in consulting. What I always embrace or integrate into my leadership training is how can we actually build resilient leaders and resilient leadership teams? How can they be resilient, countering all these constantly changes around them? So fun, aligned around the goals, agile, commonly accountable, and then, building resilience.
And I love that we have fun with agile as a word, because I always laugh about this, because agile is one of this word that nobody really understands what it means, but everybody's using. So this is one of this change jargon. I like this change ready and being tuned into the change and being able to be flexible enough to adapt, right? But you mentioned something that stood up for me while you were saying, among all of those 5 things that you have listed, this is resilience. So let's kind of dive into that a little bit, because it feels like this is what this conversation is taking us. And you mentioned the resilience that you managed to practice that while you were leader, while you were manager, also within your different position, and also in consultancy. So tell me a little bit more. Why is that resilience so important for the leaders and then also for the team members within leadership teams?
I think, the most important stuff is actually resilience starts to build this this positive energy, this shield of energy, this ability to actually look at changes, look at obstacles, look at challenges as options and options to grow and opportunities to evolve. So what is it all about? In these days, working with leadership training, I hear so many people, and also in the psychology world, my wife is a business psychologist. She talks about, safe environments, psychology, safeness, or safety. When I actually boil that down, I think the best tool to avoid all this is great and resilient leaders. So what are they? They are people that, they're not specially trained or talented, but they're people that have this ability. So when they see a challenge, they actually don't see a challenge. They see an issue, or they see an assignment, or they see an opportunity. So they always have this positive mindset. They don't go into, block mode. They're survivalists, and in the best way possible. So they have this ability to work with the flexibility, the agileness, the adaptability. So, when we sit down in the morning, we know that we have this scheduled Outlook calendar. It's super nicely colored with all our priorities and to-dos and activities and teams here and then. And then, when the day is over and you're in the car and you're on the way back from work, you'll find that you only did, 5% of what you actually set out to. But you are happy about what you actually achieved with your team. And being a leader is actually not so much about being an individual, high-performing. It's about participating, leading, facilitating, coaching the team to actually, perform even more. In the old days when I was brought up, we always said synergy is like 2.2 times 2 is like 5. And then we always struggle to, what the hell was that 5? The thing is that, resilient leadership, they embrace the world and they see opportunity.
Right. And I think that for today's world that you labeled as VUCA world, that I love that acronym. And also nowadays we're facing different terminology of world that is really unpredictable in a way, that the global geopolitical situation with the wars, with the economical issues, with the different elections in different countries, it gets really, really challenging and very complex. And a lot of the leaders are facing that complexity. And as you said, that resilience for you to be able to see it from a different point of view and be able to engage no matter what, actually perseveres to that complexity, and it's leader who adapts those skills is able to really deliver instead of being blocked by all of these challenges that we're facing right now. And I'm really with you on that. I think that's a quality that is absolutely necessary, right? So is that something that people have, or is it something that we can train and coach and develop? How does this work from your perspective, resilience? Is that something that, you are resilient by nature, Johnny, I'm sure. That's how you come across. What about others?
When we start out all these leadership development programs, very often we start out, personality profile or team profile, leadership profile. And why do we do that? Because it's actually a very good foundation, regardless of our religion or our beliefs. Do they work? Don't they work? It gives us a foundation of, an instant flash of who are we actually working with. Some of these people have very little resistance. They hate changes, or they can they be trained? The fun part about resilient leadership is actually, in the old days, I keep saying old days because I'm old, but in the old days, we had problems. It was so easy. We were problem solving, or, one task, one person, one task, one team, done with. Then we moved into dilemmas. It was either or. It was so, it wasn't really more simple, but it was, black or white. Now it's both and. And it's the both and that normally, very often frustrates people.
Exactly.
So why would I, I work with this huge global company, and they're actually, the biggest in the world for what they do. It's a service company. And their highest mission or mission statement is actually take care of all the businesses that their customers do, which are not their core business. So looking at a pharmaceutical like Novo Nordisk, proud to be Danish these days, actually have one core business to develop, produce, and sell high-end pharmaceuticals. What is not their core business? Everything around that. So the factories, the security, the staff, etc. My client or my customer actually takes care of everything else.
Right.
Constantly met with, the demand of high customer experience expectations. On the other hand, they always, because they're American, forced by having, quarterly reviews that have to be spot on in profitability and sales growth. Why? Because they're managed by the stock exchange. So it's about having this ability to be short-term, thinking long-term. It's the ability to work with the new strategy, the new developments, hence not forgetting the old ones, because that's actually our history. History could be yesterday, but today we are forced to do something else. So what do we call all this both and? We call that paradox leadership. And it's not a simple concept, but if you think about it, how can we think about using both hands? I was brought up, I was a footballer, soccer player when I was young. So, and I was right-handed. I was right-footed. But I went into goalkeeping because I think attackers, they're like the weakest people in the world. We lead everyone in the team, but they're highly praised when they score, and they're not really, yelled at when they miss a goal. When the goalie miss a goal. If you watch football this weekend, it was terrible to watch all the goalkeepers, fading big time. Yeah. And you feel instantly. Resilience is to be on the field, be in the team, high performing, failing, but still fighting. So it's a both and it's long term, short term, and it's the yesterday versus tomorrow. So being innovative while still having a very tight grip on your balance sheet.
Yeah. You're setting a very high expectation, which I love, for the leaders, because I think that leadership and the leaders within the teams, they need to grow significantly nowadays. And, if you look into just how you describe the leader's position through resilience of them being able to use both hands and left and right and behind and forward and think history and think future, and this whole confusing leadership when everything is yes and instead of dilemmas, which I think it's really, really challenging for people to kind of uphold, because you need to be a very specific member of the team to be able to hold that. It's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot for people. I know this sounds heavy. It's a lot, but how do we then tackle that? That's my next thing to you.
First of all, I think, don't move into leadership positions if you just do it for the prestige or the pretentiousness or all the goodies. I mean, being a leader, you need to love people. You need to love to embrace a constant, ever-changing world that you're not able to stop. And previously, we made a SWOT. It was so easy. We looked at the strength of the company, weaknesses of the companies, and we looked into the market and we found some opportunities. What's some threats? We knew our competitors. 14 days later, we had a very good plan, or if we couldn't find a plan, some big consultancy would make us a template, and then we'd use that one, and then we had a plan. Nowadays, that's a reason why companies work with rolling forecasts. The changeability is ever increasing. So coming back to your questions, what can we do? First of all, don't move into leadership if you don't love people and love, challenges. That's one thing. Secondly, if you need to have this tick-off day, so every 8-10 hours you've been working, you tick off all the boxes, and you go home, and you're happy-go-lucky. If you need that, I think tomorrow's leaders, they will never have that privilege. Why? Because that tick-off, it just, initiates anyone. I work with must-win battles in terms of leadership development and strategy. I love must-win battles. It's a simple tool. It's something that I'm totally religious and rigid about. If we have 4 must-wins, those are the 4 must-wins that we use, for all our priority settings. But you've been in management meetings too. So Monday morning we come in, we forget the must-wins, and suddenly we have 10 new ideas. We start to talk about these 10 new ideas, and in the end, some always stupid CFO or COO, he will say, "Hey, didn't we agree?" Blah. But the sales and marketing director, my sales guys, they're not able to sell this and that. We need something new. Resilience, paradox leadership, and that's why I get scared sometimes when I see all these new leadership development companies popping up all over with all the new theories. I love all new theories, and I encounter a new one every week, and I get a little inspired. But sometimes we forget one word: discipline. I know it's a boring word, it's an old-fashioned word, but discipline is actually super important when we need to execute our plan.
Yeah.
And why make plans if we don't execute?
Exactly. I'm with you with the discipline, but for me, the discipline, it's a gateway to freedom. That's how I explain it to my leaders. When you have that level of discipline, then you actually free yourself up, even though that word sounds really, really rigid and really heavy, and you have to obey to certain rules, and you need to follow certain processes that you commit yourself to. But I feel that absolutely I'm with you on that, Johnny. The discipline, especially this paradox leadership situation that we're in right now, it's super important that we follow through, right? And we have enough resilience, because creativity is also exponential. What you were saying about people coming up with new ideas, new solutions, rolling forecasts, everything is moving so much that unless we have this level of discipline, unless we have the level of focus that is necessary for us, then the leadership become a very challenging job. And what about teams? So what is your assessment? I know that I love your distinction, as you, John, I need to say, with the old times and the new times. I think for the younger leaders who are in their new positions, so for the senior leaders, they will recognize what you're saying. But I also feel that younger leaders in their 30s and 40s, millennials, they need to learn from the experience. So how do you assess teams nowadays? We started this conversation to what you said is necessary when it comes to fun, being able to be aligned, being able to be agile, being able to be accountable, being able to be resilient. I just want to remind the audience around that. In addition to that, where would you like to take the team? So let me give you a situation. So the company XYZ comes to you and says, Johnny, here is our team. We want team to be high performing. You have experience, both from military and from business and from international clients. Take them into the journey of high performance. What would you do?
First of all, I would actually I will spend a little time, what I always do actually. I do an analysis. I do, I put myself in the place of the company. I walk around in the company. I love international companies. I love Danish companies. What do I love the most? I love companies that are actually, open for the change. I have clients that call me and said, hey, my leadership team is not performing. Come fix it. Come be, the painkiller. And I move in and I talk with the C-level or the HR director or whomever, or the sponsor of the project. And then I say, okay, I'll send you a proposal. I'll design the best proposal ever for your team. You need to allow me to have a little, feeling around. So I do two things. I do the personality profile and I do the team profile. That's my kind of academia. Then I have something to work with. I have some flavors. Then I walk around in the company. I attend management meetings. I walk in the manufacturing plant. I sit in with sales meetings. Why? I need the lingo, I need the terminology, and I need a sense of the culture. So many companies always tell us we have this mission. It's world class. We have these values, best in the world. Some companies always tell me we are passionate leaders. But you move up to the first floor and you see, half the executive team is just, walking, bowed head, because they didn't reach the quality target. Then they're being yelled at, or they have a very bad culture of looking back instead of looking forward. So what do? I always assist by feeling and testing. Then I have a temperature. I have, I set up my diagnosis. And then I do the third one. I have a kickoff before I actually kick anything off. And I test with cases and problems and challenges that I throw on the table. Test if they have a plan. First of all, I make them make a plan. And then I test them on, hey, if I stress it, if I rip it apart, if I do this and I do that, how adaptable are they? How flexible are they? Are they agile? Do they get frustrated because this, consultant, he only knew of us for 3 weeks and then suddenly he knows it all. But it's not really about that. It's about, getting the team into a platform or sense of, hey, we need to open our ears, we need to open our arms, and we need to listen a little. So I spend a lot of time listening and then I force them to listen. It sounds harsher than it is. It's actually quite fun exercise. But I need them to be able to see the fun and the seriousness in being able to adapt and adjust.
Yeah. And that combination of serious fun, as we call it, I have this term serious fun, and people are like, what is serious fun? It's an ability to be, having fun experience, but at the same time, really looking into the seriousness of the situation. So when you drive this process with your team, what is the usual outcome, and why would teams benefit from that service from you? What happens?
I think my background in being an operator, being a business leader, and then a consultant. I wasn't brought up in the consulting world. I was taught consulting the hard way. I was actually laid off from being a Nordic managing director of a big IT company, and suddenly I found myself without a job. I called a headhunter and I said, hey, Eric, what am I supposed to do? And he said, you're not supposed to do anything because you have so many skills, you have so many industries you've been in, you can't do anything. You'll be able to do one thing. Okay, move into consulting. So what did I do? I trained a lot and I trained a lot and I trained even more. And then I moved gradually into consulting. I started in sales and marketing consulting, strategy, and then leadership. Why do I say that? Because when I challenge leadership teams, I always start out by drawing what I call an ASTO model. It's super simple. There's 50,000 different strategy models in the world. I draw one and then I make the team, buy into it or add content. So it's all about what is our aspirations, what is our mission, vision, our goals. Are we aligned about this? Do we actually know it? What's the company priorities? From A to S is a strategy. Strategy is, of course, feed it from, a lot of analysis. And on the outside, we say, okay, what is our playing fields? Do we actually know our segments, channels, customers? And do we actually know how to play, how to win? And then we drill one leg down. So we A, S, and then now we are T, tactical implementation. Oh, Johnny, you don't mention that. They always go, oh no, not that again. Activity planning, yes. Activity planning with must-win plans and priorities. You never leave the room without those. And they go, that's a tough one. And in the end, it's actually about the leadership development, because now we come to the mobilization of the organization. And who is responsible for that? It's the leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So now we say, okay, do we have a new strategy? And are we equipped to do that? What is the gap between our current, competences and the ones we need to have? And Zoran, you and I know it's super expensive to buy us, but it's a return on investment game. So can we actually take one team, train, facilitate them to do a new strategy or execute on a new strategy? It's way cheaper than to hire anyone.
Exactly. And for me, I can vouch that I do the similar processes you do, especially when it comes to the application and drilling into the details. I think a lot of the times, the teams do require, support in getting into those action points, in writing down the plans, and actually milestoning, executing, and agreeing. And I know that people want to be in a bigger conversation because everybody has an opinion, right? Everybody thinks that they know where we need to go. But when it comes to holding them accountable to that performance and really getting into the nitty-gritty, who is going to do what and how and why, I see that there is a big difference when this is done within the team. I see the huge level of creativity and accountability surge after people go through this uncomfortable and tedious exercise that people sometimes think is unnecessary. Yeah, wonderful.
There's one thing, I've always, tried to, what is the magic in the room? Where do we have a missing part?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a current customer right now who is a global Japanese American company, and they're not very successful in execution. Being Japanese and American, you would say, hey, we're born to be
exactly
to execute. But the thing is that they have this corporate team and they do the strategy. Then when it's translated into activities, something happens. They get really, the best bling bling PowerPoints in the world. They're all self-explanatory. But they don't get is why don't people take ownership? And to me, that's a very simple equation. Ownership, you need to involve people, you need to engage people. Otherwise, you're not able to, demand or, crave ownership. Why could you? And actually, one of the guys that inspires me in this way is Lencioni. Lencioni has this, model of 5 dysfunctions or 5 behaviors of a cohesive team.
Yeah.
I love how he, in a simple way, put it, that if there's no trust in the foundation of our team, everything falls apart.
Yes.
If I actually start up there and say, hey, if we don't have the common results, if we are not able to execute, are we actually really, accountable on a team perspective? Are we committed in the room? Did we have all the right conflicts? And are we actually trustworthy in the team? And then, the C guy, he would always look at me and say, are you crazy? We have a high degree of trust. Okay, let's test that. Now we move into the meeting and we put 2 people who hasn't been in the other meetings. Let's see how much they will talk. They won't say anything. But we still demand ownership.
Exactly.
Trust, involvement, engagement comes before everything else.
Yeah, I've learned that model a long time ago when I was challenged with the leadership team that was really dysfunctional. And I didn't really know what was the problem because as in this case that you said, they were really slick and sophisticated in communicating. And it appeared to be an extremely healthy working environment. And then nothing was happening on the operational level. Nothing was executed. They had a big plan, big strategies, big visions, big expansion. And they also had money at this moment in time because they were one of the companies who was lucrative, but they wanted to become more of it, right? And then that trust issue came about. When I found that model, like you said, then it was a very important, pivotal moment for me at that time as a coach and consultant, and also for them to really understand what was missing. And you're absolutely right. We're talking about the successes of the team. If that trust is not there, in addition to fun, alignment, agility, accountability and resilience, then everything falls apart, right? There is nothing to hold these things together. And as you said, for your wife, who is the work psychologist, this psychological safety, this is one of the new lingos that everybody's using nowadays.
Exactly.
In development, psychological safety, people need to be psychologically safe. They need to exuberate that level of comfortability so that they can be 100% themselves. And without trust, there is no psychological safety as well, because people don't feel willing to share or engage or own, because there is no that core glue that brings everything together, right?
Agree.
So much, Johnny, to talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that it just brings me to one thing, and I think we aligned on this one. And that is, we are very good at when we've done all this hard work, and then we come to the compensation of people, and how will we measure and monitor? Most companies, they are super strict and very good at delegating KPIs. Key performance indicators, we know them. We start from the CEO, and he is 5, and then at the bottom level of execution, sales managers, functional managers, they would have 25. Why don't we look more at key behavior indicators?
Exactly.
We actually know that we cannot change the budget, we cannot change the KPIs, we can change our behavior and the activities that we do to actually reach our KPIs. Those are some of the things that without saying it consciously, that's some of the things that I always drive for. Let's look at what we actually do and how good we do it.
Yeah. And so we're coming towards the end of this wonderful conversation. When you have a good company, the time really flies. But I'm always receiving the feedback that we need to keep the podcast within the time frame so people can really engage and listen. If you cross certain bridges, then people don't. So reflecting back on our conversation, Johnny, we covered a lot of topics. We opened up a lot, but we also kind of managed to give some people tools and a certain way of thinking. What do you feel it's important right now for you to kind of drop towards the end of conversation when it comes to the teams or leadership, anything that you feel inspired when it comes to call for action, when it comes to your perception, the way of being and the way of working that you feel the audience would love to hear from you?
I think when some of the things that is very hard to do when you are, you're in that hamster wheel, or you're in that world that just crunches numbers, crunches works, and you survive, and then you breathe during the weekend. Hopefully you breathe during the weekend, and you muster in on Monday. Sometimes I force team leaders to step back and say, okay, what is the vision of my team? Hey, what is it? What are we? I mean, that we are a functional team, but what are we as a team? Are we, and if you look at teams today and look at AI or the internet as such, and teams like you and I doing, we could be sitting, all over the world. I hope teams would work a little about, hosting teams that are put together with agile, or word agile, that emotionally intelligent people and globally minded people. Why? Because not only the worker world will demand us to do so, but all this DEI, sexism, and all that stuff puts so much stress on being leaders that you need to have, what is it that I actually seek back to? Then being a specialist. My second, I don't have that many good advices, or I have a lot actually, but one thing that always follows me is that when I was a special operator, we made plans. We did mission testing. We did combat training. We drew, and we made whole models of the mission. And we kept on training, and we kept on giving each other feedback. All till the very point of engagement. All to the very point of engagement when a team is going to execute on a strategic initiative. Feedback. Are we aligned? Feedback. Aligned. Feedback. Why? Feedback is the only way that we can, foster this continuous learning journey. We need to be totally learning all the time. I'm 57 years old. I can't find a day where I'm not learning.
Yeah. Lucky you, because, that keeps you young as you are. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you so much for the wealth of the experience, from wealth of the sharing. And of course, people can feel your energy. And one of the reasons why I invite guests like Johnny is not only for his knowledge and expertise, but also from his energy, because I think the energy that he's communicating to all of us, an invitation. It's really powerful one. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in and tuning into TNM Coaching Unplugged podcast. I hope for the leaders and team leaders and functional leaders, for HR people, executives, this was some good podcast to listen to get inspired. And if you want to know more, if you want to hear more, if you want to work more with Johnny or myself or TNM Coaching, all the references to both of us will be listed in the description of this podcast. Johnny, once again, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Everybody else, bye for now.